Hello and welcome to Brilliant POV. Welcome to our video on Nancy Pelosi, the powerful Speaker of the House of Representatives and a force to be reckoned with in the Democratic Party. In this video, we will take an in-depth look at the bold moves and decisions Pelosi has made throughout her political career that have left some questioning her choices. From her handling of the impeachment proceedings against President Trump, to her passionate push for the Affordable Care Act, and her calculated strategy of delaying the transfer of power to President-elect Joe Biden, we will uncover the reasons behind the controversies, as well as Pelosi's convictions for her actions. It's worth noting that the information provided in this video is based on publicly available information, and different perspectives may have different opinions on the controversies discussed. 1. The impeachment proceedings against President Trump in 2019 to 2020 were considered controversial by some, as they were seen as deeply divisive and politically motivated. Pelosi was instrumental in launching the impeachment inquiry, citing concerns about Trump's conduct in pressuring Ukraine to investigate his political rival, Joe Biden. Critics of Pelosi's handling of the impeachment proceedings argued that the process was rushed and that there was not enough evidence to justify removing the president from office. They also argued that the impeachment proceedings were a distraction from more pressing issues facing the country, and that the focus on impeachment was a political move designed to hurt Trump's chances in the 2020 election. Pelosi herself defended her decision to move forward with impeachment, arguing that it was a constitutional duty to hold the president accountable for any abuses of power, and that it was her moral duty as a leader to put country before party. In the end, the impeachment proceedings did not lead to Trump's removal from office, as the Senate acquitted him on both articles of impeachment. 2. The Affordable Care Act, ACA, also known as Obamacare, was a major piece of healthcare reform legislation passed in 2010 during Nancy Pelosi's tenure as Speaker of the House. The law aimed to increase the number of people with health insurance by expanding Medicaid and providing subsidies to help people purchase insurance on the individual market. Pelosi played a key role in getting the ACA passed, as she worked to build a coalition of support for the bill and used her position as Speaker to guide it through the House of Representatives. However, the passage of the ACA was highly controversial, and it faced significant opposition from Republicans. Critics argued that the law would lead to increased costs and decreased quality of care, and that it represented an overreach of the federal government. Some of the arguments for the ACA were that it would ensure that all Americans had access to affordable health care, it would improve access to preventive care, and it would reduce the number of uninsured Americans. The ACA did bring a number of changes to the American healthcare system, but it also brought some challenges and criticisms, such as some states not opting for the Medicaid expansion, and people losing their coverage due to some rules and regulations. Pelosi and other supporters of the ACA defended the law and argued that it was a necessary step to address the problems in the American healthcare system. The ACA is still a topic of much debate and ongoing legal challenges. 3. In 2008, Nancy Pelosi, as the Speaker of the House, supported the passage of the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, EESA, also known as the Wall Street Bailout. This legislation provided $700 billion in funds to stabilize financial institutions and prevent the collapse of the U.S. economy. Critics of the bailout argued that it was a giveaway to Wall Street and did not do enough to help struggling homeowners. They felt the government was rewarding banks and other financial institutions for their reckless behavior, instead of holding them accountable for the financial crisis. Furthermore, it was criticized for not providing enough resources to help homeowners and families facing mortgage foreclosure. Pelosi and other supporters of the bailout argued that it was necessary to prevent a complete economic collapse, and that the funds would eventually be used to help homeowners and others impacted by the crisis. The bailout was seen as a highly controversial move, and it was widely criticized by many people. The public was outraged and the Congress was split on the decision. Furthermore, the bailout and the management of the funds were widely criticized for lack of transparency and lack of accountability. It was argued that the bailout did not do enough to solve the underlying problems in the economy, and instead just delayed the pain. 4. Nancy Pelosi, as a prominent leader of the Democratic Party and as the Speaker of the House, has been involved in various debates and controversies surrounding progressive policies and candidates. Some progressives argue that Pelosi has not been supportive enough of certain progressive policies, such as the Green New Deal and Medicare for All, and that she has not been fully behind some progressive candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Pelosi has been criticized by some progressives for not fully embracing policies that are seen as more radical or transformative, such as the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is a set of policies that aims to address climate change and economic inequality, and it has been endorsed by many progressives and some Democratic presidential candidates. However, Pelosi herself has not fully endorsed the resolution. Pelosi also has been criticized by some progressive activists for not embracing the push for Medicare for All and for not supporting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other progressive candidates in their primary races. Pelosi and her allies argue that she is trying to find a balance between progressive ideals and the need to be pragmatic and win elections. Pelosi is known for her political savvy and has a long history of working within the Democratic Party to pass legislation and build coalitions. It is important to note that Pelosi is considered as a member of the Democratic establishment, who has a different approach and strategy than the progressive wing of the party. 5. Nancy Pelosi, as the Speaker of the House, has been involved in debates and controversies surrounding the U.S.-Iran relations, and her actions have been criticized by some as being too hawkish and not responsive to diplomatic efforts. In 2019 and 2020, Pelosi took a hardline stance against Iran, supporting a resolution to limit President Trump's ability to go to war with Iran without congressional approval, and pushing for new sanctions on Iran. Pelosi also publicly opposed Trump's decision to assassinate a top Iranian general in a drone strike in 2020. Critics argue that Pelosi's hawkish stance on Iran is not in line with the views of many Americans, and that it risks escalating tensions in the region. Some also argue that Pelosi's actions do not support diplomatic efforts to resolve issues between US and Iran and could lead to more conflicts. Pelosi and her allies argue that her actions are necessary to protect US national security interests and that it's important to hold Iran accountable for its actions. Pelosi also emphasizes that diplomacy should always be the first course of action, but that it must be done in a way that ensures the safety and security of American citizens and US allies in the region. It's important to note that the US-Iran relations are complicated and multifaceted, and different people may have different opinions on the actions taken by Nancy Pelosi and others in Congress and the appropriate stance to take towards Iran. 6. Nancy Pelosi, as the Speaker of the House and a prominent leader of the Democratic Party, has been an outspoken opponent of the Trump administration's decision to rescind the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals (DACA) program. DACA is an immigration policy that provided temporary protection from deportation for certain young people who were brought to the United States as children, and allows them to work and go to school in the United States. In September 2017, the Trump administration announced that it would be ending the DACA program, which resulted in the exposure of hundreds of thousands of DACA recipients to the risk of deportation. Pelosi was vocal in her opposition to the Trump administration's move, stating that it was a heartless decision that would hurt communities and families across the country. Pelosi also pushed for a legislative solution to protect DACA recipients and provide them with a path to citizenship. Critics of Pelosi's stance argue that DACA was an executive overreach by the Obama administration, and that it was not an appropriate way to address the issue of immigration. They argue that Pelosi's support for DACA amounts to support for illegal immigration. Pelosi and her allies argue that DACA recipients, often referred to as dreamers, were brought to the United States as children through no fault of their own and that it is not morally justifiable to punish them for the actions of their parents. Pelosi also emphasizes that dreamers contribute to the economy and society of the country and are part of American communities. It is worth noting that the DACA policy is a complex and controversial topic, and different people may have different opinions on how best to address the issues it raises. 7. Nancy Pelosi's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic relief package in 2020 was controversial for some, as it was felt that the actions were slow and inadequate. The COVID-19 pandemic caused significant economic disruption and hardship for many Americans, and there was pressure on Congress to pass legislation to provide financial assistance to individuals and businesses. Pelosi was instrumental in the negotiations and passage of the CARES Act, which provided trillions of dollars in relief to individuals, businesses, and state and local governments. However, some felt that the package did not go far enough and there were criticisms over the lack of funds for health care and housing expenses. Additionally, the package was criticized for its lack of transparency and accountability. Pelosi defended her actions, arguing that the package was a necessary and important step to address the economic and public health crisis caused by the pandemic. Pelosi also emphasized that the legislation was a good first step but more needs to be done to meet the challenges that the pandemic brought. Furthermore, there were also criticisms of the slow pace at which the relief package was passed, as the package was delayed several times before the CARES Act was finally passed. The slow pace is seen as resulted in increased hardship for many Americans. It's important to note that the process of passing pandemic relief legislation is complicated and multifaceted, and different people may have different opinions on the effectiveness of the actions taken by Nancy Pelosi and others in Congress. As we come to the end of our video on Nancy Pelosi, we've explored the daring moves and decisions that have sparked controversy throughout her political career. But it's crucial to remember that behind every decision, there is a story and a conviction. Despite the criticisms and controversies, Pelosi remains a formidable figure in American politics. Her leadership and determination have been instrumental in shaping the policies of the country. We hope that this video has provided you with a deeper understanding of Nancy Pelosi and the controversies surrounding her political career, and that it has sparked your curiosity to delve further into the subject. Thank you for watching. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.